Hi guys, Stu here with a new video, and this video will be a tier list for 3v3 in 10.2 of Dragonflight. It is not a solo shuffle tier list, it is also not a 2v2 tier list, it is also not just a solo queue or a wall PvP tier list. This is purely 3v3. I did play a lot of 3v3, it is also one of my objectives this season. I think Soul Shuffle, it's very varied with queue times, and I don't want to invest myself too much in Soul Shuffle. I still play it because, again, I think it's very good content, but the queue times just is still there. But in 3v3, I did play a lot with multiple characters, with multiple comps, with multiple roles. I also healed, I did DPS, and I played setup comps, I played cleave comps, I played also casting cleaves, and I kind of have a good idea on how the meta is shaping currently. Of course, a meta patch or a balancing patch will probably shake this up, but this is the beginning of 10.2, and I wanted to have a 3v3 tier list at least on my channel so I can compare it with further iterations of 10.2. Now, big disclaimer, a lot of specs are tied with comps. It is what it is. If you're thinking about sub-rogues, you're going to think about RMP. If you're thinking about a fire mage, you're going to either think about either a iteration where they're playing with a melee like windwalker, warrior, or even just a rogue like RMP again. Or if you're thinking about destruction warlock, you're going to think about castle cleaves. You're going to think about eventually with a elemental shaman, and then with a resto druid, or even right now balance druid, destruction warlock, which is a very big comp. So I'm going to not take them into vacuum, but again, it's a big intro. Let's talk right away about the specs. I also have Dressfar open. You see, there's not a lot of 2100 or 2400, so don't take this data as final at all. Like in EU or in US, you don't have a lot of data, but you already see a trend of good specs and otherwise bad specs. But representation is not everything, but I'm going to start right away talking about Augmentation Evoker. I think Augmentation Evoker is down to the dirt. I don't want to put them at D tier, but I want to put them at D tier. I'm going to put them at C tier. I think it's still like somewhat unplayed right now because of the nerfs and because of Devastation Evoker actually being way stronger than previous patch. They changed the mastery of a Devastation Evoker, which in general they're going to feel more powerful for a longer time, I would say, in a match, and that's a good thing. And Augmentation Evoker being nerfed on the things that actually made Augmentation Evoker strong did make an impact on their playability. Now, is it like unplayable? I don't think so. I think it just is a support spec that doesn't really support as much as previous patch, which again, that is the whole reason why you would pick a Augmentation Evoker. Devastation Evoker, I'm going to talk also. I think it's not that bad in 3v3. It is cheesy, but I saw a lot of castle cleaves with a Devastation Evoker, and it becomes very hard to stop. While the Devastation Evoker comes with a melee, they were easily stopped, except like for the one Frost Decay that actually destroyed me with a Devastation Evoker, but that is pretty much a cheesy comp where the healer just has to notice what is going to happen on the screen. But I'm going to put them at B tier. Previously I had them at D tier or C tier. I think B tier is honest, it means that it is good. I'm going to write it here because people are like, it's already typing in the comments. But B tier means it's good, it is not bad, it is just not meta in my opinion. They may as well be meta, but for 3v3 I think it's stoppable. I think there are more comps that are better without a Devastation Evoker than with, but I do think they have a place in the meta where they are good versus certain specs and a bit worse versus others. But I do think it's way stronger right now. It's still not my cup of tea though. Preservation Evoker, like I see also on the graphs, but also just the feeling of in-game, I do see them a lot less. I think the damage currently is unhealable for them. They don't have too many CDs, and the CDs are not like that impactful compared to Season 1. I think the loss of the instant living flames procs from Season 1 is still a bummer. They need to change something there to make them feel and play better in general. And I think they're going to do that, but right now they're not doing it. So for me, I'm going to be very harsh. It is a C tier spec. I was never like in problems versus a preservation evoker. I think you can still perform as a preservation evoker, but I don't think it's very good, especially like versus the normal best healers currently in 3v3. Also, you get very quickly. Like it's disgusting, and if you're playing a mana game, then you're going to lose more likely than not. Let's talk about warlocks. Warlocks are actually very strong in threes. They do play with their best comps. That's why in social fight it's a bit different. But I'm going to talk about affliction warlock right now. I think it has a place in the meta. I think the issues with affliction warlock is facing DHDK pretty much. DKDH. Anyways, hero cleave. They are very vulnerable to that. I feel like it's also very hard to ramp up versus them, and as Affliction Warlock, you're going to struggle versus that. But there are other comps where you're going to have a breeze if you're playing with a Shadow play, like with a Shadow Priest, for example, or if you're playing with an Elemental Shaman, or if you're playing even with a Devastation Evoker I already saw, which is something very bizarre, but it actually works. I do feel like Affliction Warlock, I want to put them a bit higher than a Devastation Evoker, but I might make another tier above just to separate the specs. But I'm even going to do it right now. I'm going to put a other one, which is A+, which is different from what we had on the 2v2 tier list, which I think there is stupid strong specs, but not as much as in 2v2. But Affliction Warlock is A tier, and I think A+ will be the separation between the other specs with Affliction Warlock. So A tier, it means that it is meta and you can do very well with it. Destruction Warlock, I'm going to talk about it. I think it's very, very strong. I think it's scarily strong. You already see it with the representation, but that is normal because whenever Warlock is very strong, you will see a lot of Destruction Warlock, a lot of Demonology Warlock, because there are people that are very fan favorite of those specs. But Destruction Warlock is definitely a plus. It does insane damage. It is stoppable though, because if you actually target the Destruction Warlock and you're doing a good job stopping them, they will not have a lot of Chaos Bolt damage. And that is actually the one thing that is actually very scary to face versus Destruction Warlock. Right now they're playing with Internal Combustion and Chaos Bolts with Mastery a bit. Like they're stacking Mastery. I do on my Warlock, I stack Mastery. And that combination with the talent Internal Combustion just makes it like pop a lot of damage. I'm talking about 230k minimum Chaos Bolt damage with a 60k to 70k internal combustion, which is a combination of 300k safe damage. Again, you can also just add a bit more damage if they are full mastery, but that is the minimum of what you're going to get hit if you're letting them cast. And that is actually very scary. They have good CC, they have triple school spells, they play generally with another caster, which is very difficult to deal with if you're like not really prepared versus that. I might make a guide about how to face caster cleaves in general if you're like a melee cleave. It's a meme, like melee cleaves, it is normally the easiest thing to do, but trust me, if you're a melee cleave and you're facing a caster cleave, often than not it is very jarring to play against. This is not like solo shuffle where again no communication. In 3v3 you have communication, it becomes very hard to actually deal with that. Demonology Warlock though is way stronger right now. They changed a lot of spells and I think it's S tier. I think it's sleeper OP. It's very hard to nerf it though, because a lot of the damage that comes is very unpredictable, and not really unpredictable, but it's unstoppable, I would say. And if you nerf that, then they have like literally nothing. I think it's a Feast of Famine spec right now. If they nerf something about Demonology Warlock, they may as well just drop down to B tier. But right now, with all the combinations of all the buffs that they got, but also the passive damage that they get from the imps, from the Felguard, from the second Felguard, from the Tyrant actually not doing that much damage anymore, because they do play a spec, or at least a build, where you are not making the big Tyrant, but you're making a Tyrant to buff the other demons and the other things that are actually on the screen versus you. So it's very tough to deal with it, and I think it's a S tier spec right now. Elephant in the room, let's get it out. It is Havoc Demon Hunter. I think it's the best melee spec in 3v3. I don't care if someone is actually saying, oh, but they die in stuns. Come on, man. A lot of specs die in stuns, first and foremost. Even Arms Warrior dies in a stun, by the way, because they don't have anything to actually like activate once they are like stunned. But many specs has that problem. You cannot use that dying in stun meme to justify the power of a demon hunter, like a Havoc demon hunter. I think it's very strong. I think the combinations of comps are certainly strong. Again, Havoc demon hunter is not only just a comp that is strong, but it's literally every combination of a Havoc demon hunter that is actually very strong right now. Demon hunter with a boomy, too strong. Demon hunter with a DK, stupid strong. Demon hunter with elemental shaman, the pressure is unreal. Demon hunter with even a sub rogue is dumb. Trust me, if you see a demon hunter with a sub rogue, you would think it has nothing to do with each other, but trust me, it is very hard to deal with it. Trust me, if you see it in the ladder, let me know. It is dumb. Again, I hated that time I played versus them in trees. But it's strong. It's strong. You have Demon Hunter with a Windwalker. You have Demon Hunter with even a BM Hunter, which is the most unavoidable damage on Earth. You have many combinations. So it's not only the comps that are strong, but it is literally Havoc Demon Hunter. It will get nerfed. I don't want them to drop to D tier as well, but I don't know how they are going to get nerfed, because a lot of the kit is actually very strong. They might just as well put a whole aura buff, like an aura nerf to the whole kit. But that's my opinion. Again, let me know in the comment section below what you are thinking about the Havoc Demon Hunter. Don't be biased, don't want them to be D tier. Just say what is strong with them and try to justify and try to explain why they should nerf and what they should nerf. Let's talk about the monk specs. I think fist weaving is actually doing very good, and you also see that on the graphs. It's not really the most popular specs, and it already has like a good 10% of representation. But not only that, I think mostly they're playing fist weaving, which is very hard to deal with if you're playing versus a fist weaver which has a melee cleave behind him or in front of him, pretty much. It's actually very hard to stop, and if you don't have the comps to actually deal with that, it is really doing a lot of stuff on your screen. I do feel like it's A tier though, because I'm thinking about multiple specs in front of him, and I'm going to explain why. But right now I'm going to put them at A tier. A tier is not bad, by the way. A tier is meta, guys. You have to put that outside of your mind. A tier is very strong. I think in Soul Shuffle it's a bit stronger, Fist Weaver. In trees it is with coordination dealable. You can deal with a Fist Weaver if you're in trees. If you have like coordination and you have voice and you actually call CC out and you can actually punish them, you can do well. But I think it's just not fun to play against mostly, and that's why people just detest Fist Weaving. It is just not fun to play against it. It feels like PvE too much. Like it's PvE inside of PvP. Windwalker, I would say it is surprisingly strong. I mean, the damage is there. I think the representation is a bit misleading because it's not really the most popular spec out there in general. It's not fun for the majority of players. People don't like monk class in general. But I do feel like they lose the 4-set from previous season, which is a great 4-set. I think it's difficult to judge them with the current 4-set, which is more around blackout kick, if I'm not mistaken. I do feel like they're still doing a lot of rising sun kick damage. In my eyes, I'm putting him in A tier. There is a world where I'm putting him lower and at B tier, but I'll have to judge the other specs before, so I can actually decide if I'm going to drop them or not. But for me, it is a meta spec, a good spec, at least. But I don't understand why people put them at C tier though. Like I saw a few tier lists where I'm going to scratch my head and ask them why they put them at that tier, but whatever. I mean, I can understand their bias, but still, I do feel like they are A tier. At least they're very strong in my eyes. Let's talk about DKs. I think Frost DK is one of the specs where I'm very underwhelmed and a bit sad playing versus them, but also playing as. I feel like they don't have a lot of things going on for them, and I do feel like they're very cheesy. If Devastation Evoker is cheesy, I do feel like Frost Decay is even more cheesy. And with current meta, where most likely you're going to face a rogue, or arms, or even a DH, and you have to rely on your Pillar of Frost, it's very difficult. So for me, it's going to be a D tier spec. I don't have a lot of hope. Currently, I do want them to be reworked, but I don't know if they are going to be reworked this year at least, so it's going to be very difficult for you guys. While they have a great spec, in contrary with Unholy DK, I think Unholy DK is S tier. I think it's, if you currently nerf DH, DK is the next best thing. That is at least melee wise. They have disgusting damage. I do play Unholy DK as well, so I know where the damage is coming from, and it's very much unstoppable. The death coil damage is just there, like it's a proc. You get death coiled, and then you have like PvP talent that is activating the festering wounds, which adds up 100k damage extra on top of your 100k death coil or your 80k death coil. And if you crit, then God forbid it is a 160k on your face, with the festering wounds not counted with the 160k. So the damage is really high. The pet damage is negligible, the dot damage is negligible, but then you have like your Clawing Shadows, which is a ranged spender, which is spammable, and if you have festering wounds on you, you're going to get 150k's guaranteed every single press, and that is actually a very high ability, like damage per press kind of ability. It's very strong. I think the things that are kind of stopping them from being even better than DH is pretty much their defensives. If they nerf their damage, I think they're dropping very low. Not very low, but they're dropping at least 2 tiers. I think the damage is really high, and the only thing that makes people not talk about DKs is pretty much that the DH is there and it's a bit easier to play. They have more defensives and you see them a bit everywhere right now, while DKs, they're not talking about them because the damage is there, but you have DH in comparison, but the defensives are not there. So if you're an arms warrior, you can still crunch some DKs, but the damage is really high. So, and you have the CC, you have again all the tools over DK. So I do feel like for me it's S tier, and the representation is there. I don't feel like it's the most popular spec as well. So once it's OP and the representation is going higher, it kind of justifies like the S tier rank for that spec. Let's talk about the Shaman specs. Enhancement Shaman first. Well, Enhancement Shaman is a bit underwhelming in the sense where right now the build that I do prefer to play is very RNG. I did make a guide about it, by the way, Enhancement Shaman PvP guide. If you want to check that out, do check that out. But right now, most people are playing with Lava Lash, and then you have also just the normal like Storm Strike builds. I still feel like it's very RNG. They don't have a lot of defensives. I do feel like spending heals is not the best thing you want to do. You want to do it because you have to, but you're losing a lot of damage by doing it. It's tough. I'm going to put them at B tier. I think it's very cheesy as well, but it's at least there. They need a rework as well. I just think they work in specific comps, and even then, you're not really king of the jungle. Like, no pun intended, just not king of their territory, I would say. And I feel like they need something extra taking away RNG to give them a bit more certainty would be the play, but I don't know if like Blizzard wants to do that. Also, Enhancement Shaman does pretty good in PvE, so I have no expectations of them actually doing anything towards Enhancement Shaman, unfortunately. But we'll have to see. Elemental Shaman though, it's a sleeper spec. I think people are like kind of sleeping on Elemental Shaman just because of the fact that there are other specs like that are very strong and they're trumping a bit the stats. But I think if like DH and DK they get a nerf, Elemental Shaman might be one of the better specs out there. I do think it's A plus. I understand that some people might think it is not, but in 3v3 environment you can play with a melee, which again is one of the better comps in my opinion, with a caster and a melee. I think those are the most fun comps to play as well. But you also have like caster cleaves where, to be honest, it's very hard to stop like either casters. You have also a lot of utility. I think your damage is unstoppable most of the time. So I do feel like it's A plus, and the 4 set is actually very good. So people are going to sleep on it, but I made a guide about Elemental Shaman. So if you want to check that out, do check that out. But I do feel like Elemental Shaman is really a hidden gem. So be careful about them. I do feel like they're behind Destruction Warlock right now because of the meta and how it's shapen, but it's A plus. It's still very strong. Restoration Shaman is the surprise of the patch, to be honest. I saw a lot of Restoration Shamans. I think it's really strong if you have the 2 set. It's even more stronger if you have the 4 set. I think it's very strong and very annoying to deal with on the interrupts, disruption, the extra damage that it can bring. I'm going to put them a bit higher than mistweaver in my opinion. I think it's a spec that can bring a lot, and versus a lot of specs, you are king of the jungle, again, pun intended. They can interrupt classes, and you sometimes need 3 interrupts to be able to stop them. So you as a Restoration Shaman, you have an ideal situation where you have Grounding Totem, you have Wind Shear, you have other stops that makes them very annoyed by your presence. So I think it's an A plus spec in 3v3. In Soul Shuffle it's a whole different story, but in 3v3 I think they are very strong and actually slept on by the community, and they're going to wake up once the DHs and the DKs are gone because of nerfs, and you will see Restoration Shamans literally on top, basking their fame. So I think it's going to be quite good to see that happen. I'm going to talk about Hunter specs. I think it's quite difficult to rate right now because we don't see a 4 set right now, but I will predict I'm sorry guys that people are going to say, oh, but it's not that strong. This is a prediction. I think lies and dies because of the 4 set. I think the 4 set is really strong, and I think it is worth to actually predict around it. For me, it's going to be a A-tier spec. It's very strong. I think the things that are kind of slowing them down from going higher is the nerf towards feign death. With the PvP talent, basically you cannot dispel anything on you anymore, so you are quite squishy and people can catch you, and once you're caught it's very difficult to do anything. But with a good comp and with the 4 set and with a good healer, you can actually have enough time to obliterate someone. So I do feel like it's A tier. Is it cheesy? It can be cheesy, but I think it does deserve the A tier spot for me on this tier list. Survivor Hunter, I'm going to say that I kinda don't rate them anymore. It's very hard because there is Big Max, and I know that a lot of people swear by him, and he does very well, and he is like one of the better players on World of Warcraft just in general. But it's very hard to you cannot balance a tier list based on the best players, because first and foremost, the best players are not the 100%. It's a 0.01%. But also, I think the majority of the players that are watching the tier list and listening to the tier list and enjoying the tier list, they are mostly between, I would say, 1.4k and 2.4k. And even then, at 2.4k, I don't think a survival hunter does that well as well. But you don't really see 2.4k players anyways in trees right now. But I think survival hunter, they don't survive too much. It's the truth. They die very quickly. They're stoppable. I think their niche of trapping people is quite good, but it only really works if you're playing with the PvP talent that makes it undestroyable, like breakable. And losing the PvP talent and losing the dispels on you and losing just the fact that you have your damage on your 4 set from season 1, which is not the best, with season 2, and now season 3, which is now about Fury of the Eagle. I think that you lose way too much, and I do want to drop them into the C tier category. And the stats are actually not, they're making me right on this, but again, it's not the most popular spec as well, so you cannot really rate them that much about like representation. But I do feel like they're far from being like royal, I would say, in the game. I think it's really stoppable, and I don't rate them too much as a spec. It's still better than Frostdecay, don't get me wrong, but it's not there. I think it's not in the same space as it was or what they were like previous patch. And I think if you can judge big max again, big max will make them feel like S tier, but you have to think about the like general player base of survival hunter. They're most likely going to be C tier or B tier max, depending on how you see it, the tier list and the perspective of the tier list. But for me, C tier, I think it's a fair rank for them. BM hunter though, very strong. I think it's A plus. I think it's can be S tier, but they need, if those two are nerfs, they're probably S tier. But those two nerfs, it means that all the A pluses pretty much, they can kind of jump to the S tier like section. But right now, I think A plus. I think it's like between destroy and elemental. The reason is they got a few buffs on their spec tree because of a lot of changes, but also the 4 set is incredible. I think they have unrelenting damage. The damage is also very easy to produce, and you're slippery more than survival hunter because you don't need to be melee at any time. You also don't need to really commit for a trap because you often are going to lob the trap from afar if you can, and if you can't, you can always just use an intimidation stun and then trap and just keep on kiting. But I think it's very unstoppable, and that's why it's A plus. The reason why right now it is not S is because of DKs, but also a lot of roots are annoying to deal with as a BM hunter, and that actually just kind of slows down the strength of a BM hunter. Let's talk about mage specs. I think it's difficult to rate them, that's why I'm going to do it right now. But I do feel like Frost Mage, I'm not really scared about them at all in threes. I do feel like they have comps that are kind of saving them from being very low. But I think as a spec, they're very replaceable. If you're playing Frost Mage, you can basically remove that Frost Mage by any other spec, caster for example, and you will have way more effect. I do rate them a bit, but I'm going to put them as C tier. I think it's one of the specs that are very easy to stop, like damage wise. I think Icelands does some good damage, but they kind of shove you into glacial spikes. I think they are not imperial in what they are doing, so I'm going to put them at C tier. I think it's top of C tier. They're very close of B tier, but I think Devastation Evoker is better just in every aspect than Frost Mage, so that's why I'm put them in, like I put them at C tier, because I need to separate them. I need to separate the two specs. And I think right now Devastation is just better than Frost Mage in any regard. While Fire Mage is actually very strong. I think it's A plus, a bit lower than BM though, because it is killable. But I think RMP, your spec that you're going to play is Fire Mage. I think again, from what I've seen from playing, but also from streams and whatever, fire mage can be played in caster cleaves as well, and that is actually very lethal. Like destruction warlock with a fire mage is a good comp. You should not sleep on that, and they are pretty much stopped by DHDK, let's be honest, but you can expect them from being a performing comp. I would say they are very strong together, but also fire mage with any other like caster, like for example affliction warlock or elemental shaman or whatever, they can work pretty well. But you can also play with a melee, you can play with like RMP, which is quite not really very basic, but it's still there. But fire mage with windwalker is very strong. Fire mage with a DH, I already saw that it's also packing punch, at least power wise. With arms warrior you can also just perform. I think it's a very squishy comp though, but you can perform. And I think fire mage is hiddenly waiting for the nerfs from DH and DKs to actually overtake them and go higher on the tree, on the tier list. I think arcane is difficult because it's very niche. I didn't see too many as well, but I do feel like it's better than Frost currently. You could again disagree with me. I think the 4 set is like at least a 2 set. I think it's the arcane missile, right? That is very, very strong. It is like just basically a spell that you always used anyways, is going to get insanely strong because of the 4 set. So I would say that they are B tier, but also they have great synergy. They're very unkillable as well. And a good arcane mage can make them feel like they're S tier. But still, B tier, good tier. I think it's good. And I will see more and more arcane mages in the coming weeks anyways. Let's talk about druids. I think Feral is in a state where they kind of wait for their 4 set, but they have good comps. I'm going to put them at A tier, which is not bad, by the way. They are doing very well versus a few comps. They have the damage to actually follow up the CC, but also the 2 set and the 4 set, they are very good. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what is Feral, like what Feral Druid will become once the 4 set is out and everyone is playing with 4 set. But currently I think it's A tier, which is meta. I think it's strong, but I don't think it's competing with the A plus or the S tiers. Balance Druid, on the other hand, I think it's an easy S tier. I know the representation is there. I mean, 62 is quite high. They're mainly played with Havoc Demon Hunter, and it really feels like Shadowlands. I don't know if you remember Shadowlands with Kyrian Covenant, where they played literally like 1 to 2 games every 3 games, and that was Havoc Demon Hunter, Boomy, and Resto Shaman, and that was disgusting, and people play that right now. So again, be careful. I think in general a Balance Druid is a bit weaker than the Demonology Warlock, but they do perform very well. So again, be on the lookout. It's very hard to deal with it, and they can play an AoE build or like a Star Surge slinging build, and they can do a lot of damage, which is very unavoidable as well. Rest of the Druid, S tier. I think it's very hard to say otherwise. The representation is here. The damage is also here, by the way. I play Resto Druid, and what I do, I boomy weave, I don't know if I can call that, and literally spam Wrath, sometimes a Starfire and a Star Surge, and I often not finish the targets because of that. My damage is really, not really unrivaled, but they can rival with Disc Priest. But I would say the burst damage without Ultimate Penitence, because I think Ultimate Penitence is OP on Disc Priest for damage wise, I would say. But it's 4 minutes CD, so what do I expect? The Resto Druid has a way more burst damage than Disc Priest. Trust me, a Starfire can actually crit for insane amounts. I already normal hit it multiple times, Star Surge for 110k, so imagine if you crit with that, it is even higher. I think it's a very strong spec. With Grove Guardians, I think the 4 set is also quite good, in my opinion. I aim for that, at least. But also, you have your tree form, which is giving you even more HPS. So I think it's a very strong spec. Disc Priest, let's talk about Disc Priest. I think it's also S tier. I think they're contending with Resto Druids. Currently, you only see Resto Druids and Disc Priest, and with the, of course, Restoration Shaman very, very close by. And there is a reason. Again, the damage is really strong. I think the defensives are very strong. Ultimate Penitence, being as 4 minutes CD, is very worth to press. I think if you're pressing it, it can save your team, or it can even destroy the enemy team. And it is not really a hidden gem, but it is the main rival of Resto Druids. I think together they are facing each other probably most games, and yeah, they are strong, like very good healers in general. Holy Priest, they kind of suffer from the comparison of playing and having Disc Priest as a second healing spec. I don't think it's bad. So I'm going to put them at B tier, which is good. But I do feel like they are outshined by Disc Priest, especially in this current meta, where damage reduction, if you can put them at least safe from any harm, they just can return way stronger because of that. So I do feel like Disc Priest right now is a bit stronger, not really a bit, but way stronger than Holy Priest, which, again, it's an unfair comparison because I feel like there are two different specs. But Holy Priest is B tier right now. Shadow Priest, I think it's a slept on spec. I do feel like, again, people are talking about the solo shuffle representation, but 3v3 is wholly different. I think CC makes you win games, and just for that, I think it is a A tier spec. They might be even higher, but DHDK kind of stops them from being very strong, and that is mostly for a lot of specs the deciding factor of making them higher or not. Shadow Priest has the advantage of being able to play with a melee as well, and the CC that they can bring is unrivaled first and foremost, but also just unstoppable for most healers. So A tier meta, I think I'm right by saying that. I know that the playstyle is maybe not fun, but this tier list is not about fun. This is purely about power. I do feel like Shadow Priest, they can pack a punch for a lot of damage, but also a lot of CC potential. Rogues, it's tough to judge because, again, do you judge the best players or do you judge the average Joe that is playing subtlety rogue, for example? That's a tough question. The representation is not there, but assassination rogue, I mean, it's 6%. If I may say, I think sub rogue, they are going to be A+. The reason is that they are not like obnoxious as DK and DH. They are very they survive a lot of damage. They have one shots, but if you do see the one shot come, you can stop a lot of things that are going to happen in the future. So I do feel like they're stoppable. They're still very strong. If DHDK gets nerfed, they might go higher, but right now they are very strong in their survivability, in their way of CC, and with the odd one shots. But outside of that, they're not going to win outside of their one shots, so it does stay a bit cheesy at the end of the day. Assassination rogue, do I put them higher or not? It's tough because I do feel like the representation is here, but the good thing is about assassination rogue is the fall off of Holy Paladin. That's pretty much it. Like, that's the explanation I have. Augmentation Evoker being weaker, Preservation Evoker being weaker, Holy Paladin being weaker. Those three things are actually gigantic for assassination rogues, and just because of that reason, I might put them even also on the S tier. That is mainly me saying because I'm going to put them at A tier, A+. I can't. I think DHDK, they are like on their own tier, but they are much stronger than sub rogue. They are like stoppable, but you have to play the better specs like to stop a assassination rogue. but it's tough because again, Holy Paladin is not meta, so why would you play Holy Paladin just to stop an assassination rogue? Um, they do die though. They are very squishy compared to sub rogue, and that is maybe the reason why they're not like super high on the tier list. Again, A plus is high, but they are not going to be S tier, I think. At least that is my feeling currently. Outlaw rogue, I think in threes is a bit different than in Soul Shuffle. The representation is not here, but that is obviously the normal thing for Outlaw Rogue. I think it's very special to play. It's very annoying to play if you are not really super good at it. So I'm putting a bit lower than Sub Rogue and Assassination Rogue in threes because I am not confident for them being like that strong. The only Outlaw Rogues that I saw were not that good and were very stoppable. So it's very hard to judge for myself Outlaw Rogues. But in general, if I see a Twitch stream, a YouTube stream, or even just videos, or sometimes just the representation tracker from the resto, I do feel like Outlaw Rogue could be higher, but for now I'm putting them at A tier, which is not a bad tier. I think it's meta. I do feel like they need coordination as hell. Like they're not going to solo win games, but I think it's a good spec. Let's talk about Retribution Paladin. I think they did fall off of grace. Their representation is also a bit lower, especially at higher ranks. You only see one at 2100. But that doesn't really mean if they're bad or not. But I do feel like they're like less powerful than previous patch. The foresight is not that great. It is there. It is somewhat of an AoE option, but it's not like the single target juggernaut that we had in season 2 and also season 1. So I'm going to put them at A tier. I think it's better than Enhance. I think it's on the same level as Outlaw Rogue pretty much. They have utility, they have the CC, they have the damage, but I feel like you miss a MS, and if you don't have a MS effect with your tree comms, you are kind of trolling. But in general, you're going to do good as Retribution Paladin in most comps and versus other comps as well. Holy Paladin, I think the Fall of Grace does see pretty heavily on the leaderboard. I think they just get way too easily. That is the problem. I think the nerfs that they got were quite exaggerated, and I'm going to put them at the same tier as Preservation Evoker. I'm very much likely saying that they are on the same tier because of the representation, but also on how they feel mana wise. And I do feel like in most comps you're playing for mana, and Holy Paladin being there makes them actually more safe, and it's very much unkillable for the Holy Paladin group. Arms Warrior. Let's talk about Fury first. I think Fury is very clunky. I think it's just not fun as well. But I also feel like it's not strong. I think that it is way more than just the spec. I think in general, Arms Warrior is way better, and that is why you see a lot less Fury Warriors. But even the diehard Fury Warriors has some difficulty with getting better CR, better MMR. So I do feel like they are on the same tier as Survival Hunter. They are still capable of carrying games, and it's not cheesy, but it does feel like it's not that great. Again, it's my first impression. The 2-set might change, but I do feel like it's not the best 2-set as well because it is nerfed in PvP. And just because of that, you are maybe not having any value on the Fury Warrior. Arms Warrior, I think it is A+, top of A+, they are very close to S tier. I think if DH gets nerfed, you'll see this happen. But right now, DH is just a better version than Arms in most cases. The AoE damage, the AoE mortal wound, the AoE everything is making it very hard to compete. So I think right now you see DH as a S tier, and I think Arms is a legit A plus tier spec. So this is my 3v3 tier list. Again, all the explanation was told in the video, so hopefully you did watch the whole video. Again, do comment below what your tier list might be. Do let me know if you think I'm like incorrect. Again, I think I am correct, but that is maybe confirmation bias, so maybe I will wait for the comments to be actually talking about the tier list and talking through point per point why they would maybe disagree with me or agree with me. Again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be sure to stay safe. We will catch you probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.